Today marks the 40th anniversary of John Lennon's death, and fans around the world grieve his loss to this day. Lennon was shot and killed on the evening of December 8, 1980, outside of his home in New York City. The gunman, Mark David Chapman, is still behind bars for Lennon's murder in a New York prison. But to this day, fans continue to gather in New York to pay tribute to the Beatles' great. And our girl Sheila Wacko has details on a book that gives insight into what John's life was like during one of his most creative years since the early 70s. Hey Sheila, why don't you tell us about A Day in the Life? See what I did there?
Thank you, Anya. I like that. I see what you did there. So following the birth of his son Sean in 1975, John took 5 years off. In 1980, he had just gotten his creative spark back and returned to the recording studio before he was killed after working on the final mix of one of his brand new songs earlier that day. Tim English covers the year leading up to John's death in his book, John Lennon 1980 Playlist. Tim shares all sorts of interesting facts, like what kind of music John had been listening to that year and what songs inspired his new work. He also shares stories, like one about a trip John took from Rhode Island to Bermuda after he had just learned to sail in 1980.
The waves were huge, and the other crew members had gotten sick and gone below deck, so it's left to the ex-Beatle to pilot the ship through this storm. And John was the son of a sailor. His father was a merchant seaman, so he gets out there and he's sort of screaming at the gods and singing sea shanties that he knew from his youth.
Did you know that on the same trip, John heard the B-52's Rock Lobster in a disco, and he recognized their vocal stylings as a tribute to Yoko Ono? That moment inspired him to get back in the studio. Or perhaps you weren't aware that John loved listening to Donna Summer, or that the Doobie Brothers had a role in the creation of one of his songs off of Double Fantasy. I also asked him what he considers to be John's biggest legacy, and he told me that besides being a great musician, singer, and songwriter, his impact as a humanitarian was most memorable. His messages of peace in his songs live on, and so much of his music was not only ahead of its time, but also timeless.
If you listen to songs like Give Me Some and Power to the People and Imagine and Give Peace a Chance, they're really just as relevant in 2020 as they were back 50 years ago when they wrote them. I mean, it's really startling to listen to that in light of our world today.
Tim assured me that this book is for even the most hardcore Beatlemaniacs. He included all sorts of interesting new information that even John's biggest fans may have never heard before. To order a copy of John Lennon 1980 Playlist, visit the Philly Live section of NBC10.com or the NBC10 app. Anya, back to you.